Thank you all for joining us. I think we don't need to answer the question, why are you all doing what you do? But I'm thrilled to be here today to speak a little bit about the journey that these companies go on and the challenges that they face, the pinch points that they run into, and how Philadelphia helps them kind of make their way through that journey and ways that Philadelphia can do it better in the future. So my name is Melina Blees. I'm the site director for BioLabs Philadelphia. We are the global pioneer in co-working laboratory space. We're here in Philadelphia and have had a chance to work with many of the wonderful companies on this panel and organizations on this panel, as well as many others across Philly. Big believers in this ecosystem. Excited to speak a little today about what all of you do. So we're going to go down and do introductions real quick. So Doug, if you could tell us a little bit about your company, what kind of science you do, how big was your company when it started in Philadelphia, where are you now?
Absolutely. Thank you very much, Melina. It's great to be here. Thank you, everyone, for coming. My name is Doug Carr. I'm the Senior Vice President of Finance and Operations at Century Therapeutics. We were founded in 2018 by Versant Ventures in partnership with Fujifilm Dynamics Inc., who had the foundational technology of our science. We ultimately are an allogeneic cell therapy company developing iPSC, NK, and T cells for treatment of hematological and solid tumors. The company, we started in CSC BioLabs at 3675 Market. I know these numbers pretty well. We started with about three. Oh, sorry. Yep.
Sorry, folks, bear with us.
That's fine.
You're going to want to be able to hear him.
That's fine. No, just hold that. All right, great. Thank you. Very good, thank you. Yeah, so we started again in end of 2018, and we started out at CIC BioLabs. We were 3 people at the start, and we now have we're at about 163 employees. About 130 of those are in Philadelphia, and we have about 25 in Branchburg, New Jersey, at our manufacturing facility, and then we have about 8 to 10 people out in Seattle. So we have a significant presence here. We now have moved out and graduated from CIC BioLabs, and we have a sort of a campus approach. So we are very excited to be in the One U City building, the brand new building that Wexford just finished. We have 3 floors in that building. We've actually fit out 2 of those floors, so we have a significant, world-class lab space and office space. It's probably about 60-40 split. That's basically what we're doing in our floor plans. And we also have space in the Science Center at 3624 Market Street, and then we also have space at 3535 Market Street. So that's pretty much where we are at this point.
Awesome, thanks. Tracy, could you tell us a little bit about the Science Center and the work that University City Science Center does to help support companies' kind of formation and through their growth?
Absolutely. Well, I'm Tracy Bralla, and I'm delighted to be here today. Thank you all, and I understand we're like in between lunch, so hopefully we'll keep this really light and exciting. The Science Center is a 60-year-old nonprofit, and we've really been in the business of helping startups in University City for that period of time. University City is widely known as Philadelphia's innovation district. I'm really excited that we have a lot more spaces that are becoming that hub of innovation. That being said, I'm also excited that we've been in this space for 60 years. At where we are in University City, we kind of think of ourselves as Switzerland. Since we're a nonprofit, we are owned by 31 university and research partners, which is kind of a unique model for a nonprofit. And really that enables us to think broadly about Eagles territory. I loved that. So kind of Pennsylvania, New Jersey, Delaware, we actually have great relationships and opportunities across the greater Philadelphia ecosystem. As time has gone on and the needs of the ecosystem have changed, we also work around the world and across the country with other partners as well. We're really in the space of saying, how do we bring together startups, health and science, and the community? really with the goal of driving inclusive economic growth. So in addition to make sure that better outcomes are happening because of the startups that we're working with, we're also thinking about how are the startups thinking about health equity, how are they thinking about some of the issues of making sure that their trials are including a diverse group of people. We also have a very strong arm that you'll hear a little bit later on in the day is very focused on diverse STEM talent and that pipeline. And so we have a lot of opportunities there. I won't focus that much on it today, just based on the nature of the panel.
Right. Hello, my name is Mark Lorenzi, and I'm with Arrow Biotherapeutics. I'm the Chief Administrative Officer and VP of Legal. So it's really nice to be here. I appreciate the opportunity to tell you all a little bit about Arrow and our journey here in Philadelphia. So we were started based on, we started about 5 years ago based on technology that was licensed from Johnson & Johnson. And that technology, I'll tell you a little bit about it only because it really relates to the kind of needs we had in terms of space and other staffing issues as we went through our growth over these last 5 years. The technology is primarily a protein scaffold that targets, a protein scaffold for targeting, and it can be modified to basically target any particular tissue that's desired for a particular indication. It can also take on different payloads, and so we have a therapeutic end, our targeting technology, and then that's chemically linked. So as a result, we have the need for protein engineers, chemists, actually 2 different groups of chemistry experts, as well as biologists. And that meant that even as a small company, we're still preclinical, just about to cross that threshold hopefully very soon. As a small company, we really had a lot of needs from the standpoint of space, resources, and equipment. And so that was a challenge as we looked to getting started. Essentially, we were 2 founders, a CEO and a CSO, and I was there doing all the other non-scientific activities. And the incubation opportunities within Philadelphia really made a lot of sense for us. So we actually, I think, ended up taking a trail through the city in many ways, starting out in Pennovation with a single room, grew to 1 lab and then 2 labs there, kind of outgrew all those spaces just at the time that the CIC Biolab space was opening up on Market Street. We transferred there, and as Melina knows, every month we were coming back to her asking for more lab space, either shared or private. And over the course of a few years, we really had 20-plus people in that facility on a few floors and in a couple different places. So we were able to move our science forward and develop the business. We were feeling very, kind of very tight. Luckily, we were able to get through a Series A raise and then built out and have our own dedicated space at the Curtis building now. So that's kind of been the journey over 5 years from the standpoint of the development of the science, the business, and the space needs that we've had. We're about 35 people right now, and yeah, that's it.
Great. Jennifer, could you tell us a little bit about MBC and your focus and what sorts of companies you work with, and also why Philadelphia is an exciting ecosystem for you?
Sure, happy to. Jennifer Griffin, I'm a partner with Mission BioCapital. We are an early stage biotech-focused venture capital firm. We have similar bosses, Melina and I. So Johannes Fruhoff, who started the BioLabs incubator concept 15 or so years ago now, also then launched Mission BioCapital, the venture firm associated with BioLabs, about 10 years ago. So we are very proudly affiliated with BioLabs, excuse me, and over the last 15 or so years, the lab network has grown tremendously. We're now affiliated with 22 incubators around the world, including Europe, and it will, in a couple of years, have the capacity to incubate more than 850 companies, early stage life science companies. It's in over 13 cities, including Philadelphia. And while most of our team is based in either Cambridge or San Francisco, I'm based here in Philadelphia. And for us, Philadelphia is a must. You cannot have an ecosystem of incubators and not be in Philadelphia. And mostly because of the science that's coming out of Philadelphia. Obviously, there's an emphasis on cell and gene therapy which is really, transforming our entire industry. And so to have visibility into the science that's coming out of such preeminent institutions, there's Penn, there's CHOP, I don't need to tell you all the rest of the amazing institutions that you have. It's really important for us to make sure that we're plugged in and we're constantly looking for great opportunities. We are a seed and Series A investor, so single-digit millions is the first check size. We'll reserve $15 million for the lifetime of the company. And we're currently deploying capital from our fifth fund, which is a $275 million vehicle. We actually have an origin story similar to what you heard from Lorenzo earlier. Started in a very small fund. It was an $11 million fund first time around, almost 10 years ago, and have slowly grown over time, again with the model of we source through all of these incubators, but we also get to live alongside of these companies and get to know them, and we get to de-risk a lot of the founder risk inherent with early stage companies. For serial entrepreneur, for folks who are not serial entrepreneurs, we also get to de-risk the science. It's often 6 to 12 months of incubating before we actually write that first check. So the living alongside these companies is a huge benefit from the partnership that we have with biolabs.
Thanks. Eric, tell us a little bit about Kaitaro and how you chose Philly as a location.
Sure. So I'm Eric Hackrell. I'm Chief Operating Officer for Kaitaro Therapeutics. Our technology is to use stem cells and genetically modify them to produce various different proteins. So as such, it's a platform technology that can be used for many different treatments. Our first targets are acute graft versus host disease. We also have targets to treat type 1 diabetes, chronic kidney disease, and our product used in combination with CAR T-cell therapy can help to reduce side effects of CAR T-cell therapy and enhance efficacy. Kaitaro is a very unique company from my perspective because we are a new company, we're virtual, and I'll talk about that in a minute. But it is built on over 10 years of science and development from a German company called Apketh that was founded in 2007. This company had 40 million euros of investment, grew to over 90 employees. They had research lab space, GLP lab space, GMP manufacturing space. Ultimately, in 2019, they were acquired by a Japanese company and who wanted to establish a CDMO presence in Europe. And so they acquired the company for the physical assets and the people and not for the technology. The scientific founders bought back the IP for 3 different cell lines that had been developed. So now we are ready to mobilize that IP. And so we are in our initial fundraising stages, but the first product was close to starting a phase 1/2 clinical study in Germany. So while we are in initial fundraising and looking for seed funding, we're almost immediately going to be going after larger chunks of capital to support a clinical study. And so our Philadelphia journey is me. I am a Philadelphia resident, and wherever I am with my computer bag is where Kaitaro is in Philadelphia at the moment. And what we are looking to do is start an R&D lab. And so we're looking closely at the incubator spaces, such as biolabs, such as B labs, such as CIC, to establish our home base in Philadelphia. And part of the reason we're so excited about Philadelphia is that some of our scientific advisory board is here in the region, as are so many of the support systems that we need to run what is effectively a gene therapy and cell therapy company. And so that's my start of my story. I'm a little bit envious of the other companies that are much more established here.
Thank you. The next question is going to be actually for all 3 of the life science companies on the panel, and we'll just go down the line. Please tell us about the unique physical requirements that come with doing the science that you do. And for those of you who have been growing your company already in Philadelphia, how have those space needs changed as you've grown? What have been the pinch points for your company? Have you ever considered leaving Philly to deal with those pinch points? So, go ahead with you, Jeff. Doug, if you'd like.
Oh, yes. Yeah, so, I'll answer that question. But before I do that, so I just wanted to just quickly mention a little bit about the technology at Century. I failed to do that
please do.
in the answer.
Yep.
So, we are a cutting-edge company. So for those of you that know about cell therapy, there are products on the market today, autologous cell therapy products, which are basically taking cells from the person who has the cancer. They're re-engineered and reinfused back. What differentiates Century Therapeutics is that we are allogeneic, right? So allogeneic is we are developing against induced pluripotent stem cells. So we're basically taking those cells, re-engineering them, differentiating them, and making NK and T cells. And really what the value of what we're doing ultimately is, number one, to be able to actually redose patients, whereas autologous oftentimes it's sort of one and done. But what we, Century, can do, hopefully, is to be able to have the ability to redose, which would increase persistence of the drug and to also increase the efficacy and the durability of the cell therapies, because that is a challenge with current therapies today. So I just wanted to sort of, put that in there. In terms of our space, again, we have a significant, amount of space, and we've had a lot of, challenges. Again, from our start in CIC and biolabs, we grew fast. The science is complex. We needed, we had to hire people very, very quickly. And we had the same problems that you had at Arrow, right? There was no space available at CIC and biolabs.
In Philadelphia.
Or in Philadelphia in general, which was, a further complication. And then we sort of had to deal with COVID, right? So here we are, a company doing sort of very state-of-the-art, cutting-edge technology, hiring scientists like crazy, and we couldn't get space. So that's why we sort of got into this position where it's a campus approach, right? So, so that certainly has been a pinch point for us. I don't think there's anything unique in terms of how we, do our science from a lab perspective. Again, I think, we have a lot of BSCs that I know, so that changes things around a little bit. And we have a lot of different groups, and each of those groups have significant requirements in terms of how the lab needs to be designed. But I think overall, we've grown, significantly, and we have built out the space that we need. We've not thought of leaving Philadelphia at all. That's not. We are committed to Philadelphia. Again, I think in terms of our space here, we're over 100,000 square feet of space in the U City area. So we are absolutely, committed to Philadelphia.
We love to hear it. Mark, could you tell us a little bit about the same for Arrow, and also if you want to touch on sort of anticipated space needs as you guys start to think about manufacturing, that would be really helpful.
Sure. So, really that question about Philadelphia or not was an early strategic question for us. Again, there were two founders, one kind of near the city. Frankly, I live in New Jersey. Another founder, not too, really quite far away. So wherever we kind of initially set that, even first incubator spot, we knew would be fairly strategic, because as you start to hire people, whether it's out in the Philadelphia suburbs or in the city, if it makes it much more difficult to move, especially when you're a small company. If you lose, even a handful of people because they don't want to make that commute, that's different from where they were hired, that could really have a pretty major impact on a very small company. So the decision was to basically locate within the city. And there were one or two times when we actually revisited that, only because of those pinch points of growth and really feeling like there just wasn't, within the time span that we needed, there just wasn't available space for us to do what we needed to do. So it wasn't exactly just a cost issue, although some of the rents were certainly maybe more attractive out in the suburbs, but it was a question of what was available and when was it available, as well as that kind of staffing issue concern that we would have. Luckily, I think we were all happy that we were able to kind of work our way through in one way or another, staying in Philadelphia, again, by kind of growing in fits and starts a little bit with available space. Actually, there was even a point in time during COVID when we rented a room from University Science Center, just because that was available and we could expand there for just a very limited period of time. Ultimately, we were able to move into our space at the Curtis, and that included a view toward expanding in terms of our head count, as well as expansion options in a typical long-term lease. So we feel fairly comfortable with that. Quite honestly, we haven't given a whole lot of thought to manufacturing down the road. A little bit, we've got some kind of prototype space in our current space to pilot that. But as a typical biotech where we're trying to keep a small footprint, there's a lot of reliance on those outside partners, as well as the kind of expertise that you have inside in order to manage those relationships.
Eric, can you tell us a little bit about sort of your anticipated growth plan, and especially as you start looking at clinical trials, which it sounds like are coming soon, are you planning to work with CDMOs for that, or are you planning to do some of that in-house?
Yeah, that's a great question, because Kaitero, our primary constraint right now is capital, and we've talked about that in several different sessions. Eric and Lorenzo both hit that pretty well. Once we overcome that, we are 18 to 24 months from an initial clinical study. And that clinical study would be in graft versus host disease, and what that means is it'll be a very quick clinical study because we don't have to track patient progress for 18 months. We're going to get very quick readouts, very quick endpoints, and we'll know if our technology is successful. Because that is so close on the horizon, we wouldn't have time to build anything for ourselves anyway. And so we are going to rely, there's 4 main manufacturing process steps that are all unique and independent, and all 4 of those initially will go out to CDMOs, one or multiple CDMOs, and not necessarily ones that are in the region, because we're going to work with whoever partners with us the best. I have almost 25 years of manufacturing experience, and I've owned most of it, and only a portion of it has gone to CDMOs. I want to own manufacturing. So ultimately, the progression that I see is that we start in an incubator with an R&D facility. We grow into creating GLP space to support all the IND enabling, and I'm getting into a little bit of lingo, but all the preclinical research that needs to happen, all the studies that need to happen in animals. That's all non-GMP, but various grades of quality of manufacturing facility. And I would intend to do that all in the same type of space where we could grow. Even to pilot scale development work, would love to do that in the same space. Then ultimately we will want to do our own GMP manufacturing. The scale of that is really hard to project because it depends on how many different therapeutic areas we're in, how large this platform grows to, what the yields are, what the number of patients are, all that volume. It could be 10,000 square feet of GMP space. It could be 25,000. It could be even larger. So that is all a big TBD. But I really see this growth happening, a lot of the growth up to these pilot facilities over the first 5 years of the life cycle of Kaitero.
That's great. We're also at the Curtis Center. Biolabs is now co-located next door to Aero. And one of the things that was really exciting to us about that building was that it is CGMP capable. There's a company there, Invax, who's working on phase 2 clinical trial work out of that building. That does tend to be earlier stage manufacturing. It tends to be smaller scale. Curious, Doug, could you tell us a little bit about Century's manufacturing in New Jersey and kind of how you guys made that decision?
Yeah, no, it's from the get-go when the company was started, again, given the uniqueness of the cell therapy work that we're doing, we wanted to really control our own destiny, right? So what might seem unusual for a company that was starting up from scratch, preclinical, we are clinical now, we do have our first program in the clinic, but what we had decided to make that commitment very early on that we wanted to build our own manufacturing facility. Most of our key competitors were doing the same thing, and again, I think it's important. Again, many companies use CDMOs, but in our particular case, it was important for us to be able to have the capability to do this on our own, because we're doing multiple programs. We're going to NK T cells. It's very complicated, so it made the most sense to build our own manufacturing facility.
Awesome. Thank you. Jennifer, let's go to you. Can you help us understand in this tricky fundraising market what you're seeing companies do to sort of extend their runways, get creative around their space needs, their staffing needs?
Yeah, I think the main theme is focus. And so staying alive as long as possible requires some serious prioritization of programs and assets, also people. And I think there's been a lot of, I'm sure as many people in the room have experienced, sometimes difficult conversations between boards and management teams about that prioritization. And You know, as a VC, our focus is to keep our portfolio companies alive as long as possible. So participating in someone else's syndicate is not exactly the priority right now. So, you know, a lot of reprioritization and shifting resources to the most promising lead asset with the least amount of risk, and really trying to maintain the science, keep the science going. That's really the priority, because we're hopeful that if we can, again, keep as many of our portfolio companies alive as possible and have them continue to de-risk the science throughout that time, we'll be in a good spot coming out of this, and so will the companies. So that's really the main focus right now. I think, you know, not only are we biased towards the incubator model because of our affiliation with incubators, but when portfolio companies, you know, show us potential multi-year, multi-million-dollar leases, we break out in hives, and we want to make sure that that's really absolutely necessary at this particular growth stage. And of course, at some point it is, but delaying that decision as long as possible, and especially in this market, is a long conversation, and making sure that that's really the right decision. You know, we did unfortunately have to close down one company in the last 12 years. Getting out of that multi-year, multi-million-dollar lease was a huge reason that we actually got some money back in that investment, and it wasn't a total loss. So from our perspective, you know, the strategies are really focusing around prioritizing assets and resources, as well as trying to stay within a capital efficient environment like an incubator as long as possible. And you know, there's graduate space options. Up in Cambridge and Kendall Square, there's even manufacturing incubators where, you know, for cell and gene therapy companies, for example, there's GLP grade equipment that can be shared so that you can de-risk the scaling process before you even have to think about outsourcing to a CDMO. So there's a lot of different options with respect to incubator space now that are in the market. Graduation space here too in Philadelphia. So I think those are the main two focuses right now.
Just to add on to that, so I mean, it's a really good point. I think, you know, we, Century, along with many other companies, you know, we had a reduction in force at the beginning of this year. So, you know, we sort of feel that pain, even though we, Century, are, we have a significant amount of cash. It almost still doesn't matter. I mean, the key really is that you need to try and extend that cash runway as absolutely long as possible. So again, we took a hard look at our programs. We took a hard look at the infrastructure of the company, and we made the tough decisions to reprioritize so that we could extend that runway and be more efficient. So,
yeah, exactly.
If I could add, some of these considerations really depend on where you are in your kind of funding cycle as well. You know, very often after a major raise, there's a lot of euphoria, and okay, let's go hire that staff that we've been waiting for you know, however many months or years even. I think there's, you know, what we've been able to do, because we saw some of the, you know, beginnings of a cooling market, we looked at our hiring plan and we kind of pulled it back a little bit. We just had a lot of discipline as to who we were hiring when, even though we still had that whole the whole plan in place for that, you know, that whether it was a Series A or Series B. But I think that discipline can really pay off, because you, rather than hire up and then have to kind of scale back, you might be able to kind of manage that a little bit more kind of going into it, which can be a big help.
yeah, I mean, just another point on that is it is very important as well, is that, you know, I think when you say overexuberance, you know, we went public in June of 2021. I heard before that was, you know, that was probably one of the best years ever. So we were opportunistic and we did it. But, you know, again, I think the advice is really, you know, we have, you know, you've heard my story. We have grown significantly. One could argue maybe a little bit too aggressively, but I think it's important to really take a really hard look before you start, you know, planning these significant, you know, expansions and hiring, and, you know, things change, and, you know, programs take longer perhaps than what you once thought. So again, a really good hard look at that, and this whole concept of being capital efficient and using incubator space as long as possible, it resonates certainly with me. That is the approach we took, but we had to grow.
And to that end, Tracy, can you tell us a little bit about sort of how you're seeing companies grow? I mean, you've been really involved in the life sciences for a long time in the Science Center for so many years. As you see these companies grow, what is causing them to stay in Philadelphia? What's causing them to leave? I know we're all big proponents of companies staying in the Philly ecosystem, Philly, broadly speaking, Eagles territory. Tell us a little bit about your perspective on that.
Great. Well, I will. I'm going to start at like a little bit of a macro level because I think it builds on the last conversation. I started the conversation about the Science Center saying we're constantly growing and evolving our programs. And when we did our last strategic plan, we were looking at the ecosystem and we were saying where are the gaps in the ecosystem, either on a Eagles territory basis or even more on a national basis. And one of the things that we were seeing is early stage. Seed, pre-seed companies were not really quite ready to raise capital. And so we actually created a capital readiness program for companies who are looking to do their first institutional raise. So likely they'd gotten SBIR, STTR funding, maybe some friends and family, but they were going to do that next raise in the next 6 to 12 months. And it was really with this vein in line. We have this program, we bring them into Philadelphia, we partner with lots of folks who've been on the stage already today to make sure that they have those connections. There are investors, typically investors who are not going to invest in their startup, who are working alongside them over the course of the week to help them figure out what does a deal room look like, what does due diligence look like, where are those pitfalls that you might not be seeing. If you get capital, how are you going to utilize it most effectively? So that's an example of pivoting from what is necessary, what's needed within the ecosystem. We all love Philadelphia. Philadelphia is an amazing market from a life sciences standpoint. There's 70,000 people who are employed in life sciences. I know that I've heard there's 1,200 companies that are here in some capacity that are working in the life sciences space. 1 in 5 doctors comes through Philadelphia. So how do we make sure that we're making those connections? We've talked about a couple things today, and I'm not going to say those again, but early stage capital is something that's fundamental that we need. The state component of it, our ability to compete, there are really good conversations that are happening. We need to expedite those conversations with urgency and recognize that it's not just, east and west side of the state, but there really is an opportunity for that to happen across the state. So that's absolutely critical. I love Eric being up here because while he wasn't kind of the founder of Spark, he came through Spark. And to me, that's a component that's been missing within our ecosystem is those successful entrepreneurs who have founded their companies here, kind of staying engaged within the ecosystem, not disconnecting, not taking their next company someplace else. And so from my perspective, the more we're able to do that, the more we're able to engage those graduates of these successful companies within the ecosystem, that is something that we haven't talked about today, and I think we would all be better served by having the ability to do that.
We hope we're the next Spark.
Okay. Duly noted.
All right, we are absolutely running through our time. So if we could just go down the line, would you each provide a sort of one point of advice for life science companies that are starting in Philadelphia? Or Eric, if you'd like to start.
I'm starting down at this end.
Lots of
The downside to sitting on the end.
One piece of advice for life science companies looking to be in Philadelphia. I like the question that came up earlier about manufacturing space and what are we doing about that. And you mentioned that in Cambridge, there's actually manufacturing incubators. I do think we need to be thinking about lowering that threshold. Coming out of Spark, I know what the threshold actually is because Spark has a very small manufacturing center and a very large one that is now steel on the rise. We have to lower that threshold if the city's going to be successful because we need to keep companies here through the entire life cycle. And most of the jobs that are going to help the city are coming from the later stages, particularly for underserved communities. Those jobs are going to come into the manufacturing centers and quality control groups. And so, it needs to be an area of discussion.
Yeah, I think for companies that are out pitching right now, we absolutely have to see a plan that has that focus I was speaking about earlier. So why are you starting here? What are all those follow-on opportunities and when and why? And there really needs to be a lot of discipline around how you're going to be using the funds you're pitching for, much more than prior markets. So I think spending the time and thinking that through, there used to be maybe in the 2020, 2021 time, it was ask for more than you need. It's not quite like that. Ask for what you need, because we really want to make sure that plan is realistic, and that is the number that is going to get you through whatever milestone you're trying to get through. And you're not going to need to do a seat extension. You're not going to need to raise even more money than what you're asking for now. So my advice is to just really think carefully about that use of proceeds slide and what you're actually going to accomplish in it, and be in an incubator.
So maybe the company perspective of what Jennifer just talked about is a kind of a tenet of early stage innovation from an operational point of view, which is start with the end in mind and then kind of work backwards. And because I think that really provides a lot of the focus that the company needs to do, and not essentially pack other things in that are the nice to haves or would be great, but when you can afford it, right? And so if you really start with what is the absolute end goal of that particular interim phase that you're trying to get to, and you kind of draw it back, that'll pretty much tell you what you need in terms of step-by-step to get there. Along those lines, there's going to be science, which is certainly one of the big uncertain aspects of what you're dealing with, but there's a lot of other variables that are frankly more within your control. And I think those are the things that you want to try to lock down as much as you can, because overall, any funder is going to be looking at overall risk, and to the extent you can kind of control those risks, it kind of focuses the effort and hopefully gets you to that end state with a little bit more surety. Collaboration's
the name of the game. I think there's huge opportunities for continued partnerships and collaboration. Like I said, I started out by saying I'm super excited by seeing, kind of all of the pockets of great innovation that's happening, in the greater Philadelphia region. So continuing to leverage that. My team, I'll do a quick plug, runs something every Thursday called Venture Cafe Philadelphia. It happens from 4 to 8 p.m., and that's all about collaboration. This week we have a program right after the groundbreaking of One U City Square on the future of therapeutics, and we'd love to showcase the work that you all are doing, because that's how we collaborate and grow the ecosystem.
And events like this?
And events like this.
Events like this, great. So some of this I spoke about before. I think, key to me, especially for companies that are out there, trying to raise money, to be as capital efficient as possible, right? The whole incubator space is a great model. I think the other thing to do is, outsourcing is a key way to build the business, right? So try to delay hiring as long as you possibly can. There is nothing like a full-time equivalent. They have more skin in the game, I get that, but the ability to outsource, use agency employees, co-ops, contractors, et cetera. And we, just as sort of a plug for Century, we're a big, we have an internship program that we have at Century with Drexel. We have somebody from Rutgers, but it's a key resource. Not only it's less expensive, but it's really the future, right? It's giving students the opportunity to sort of show what they can do, and it's sort of a pipeline of future employees. So, I think that's really the key thing. Try to sort of just, that cash, try and keep it, maintain it as long as possible, and be absolutely as capital efficient in this marketplace today. I think the markets are starting to show signs of opening up. I mean, I think there are a couple of IPOs here and there, but I think it's going to be tough again for the rest of this year and even into next. So capital efficiency.
Wonderful. Thank you all so much. If we have a couple of minutes for questions? Just a couple of minutes for questions. Anybody have any questions? Please.
Hi there, this is a great panel. Lee Tatro from Safety Partners, and we are coming from Massachusetts. Our company is based in Massachusetts, and we're getting into the Philadelphia territory, and are really excited to be here and listen to you today. A question on the entrepreneurship piece, and saying that, a great model would be having someone who is an entrepreneur and staying there for a number of years and really representing a model of the community here. What do you think is the way to teach the entrepreneurship? Because I was at a recent conference where they were looking between Massachusetts and New York, and they said the gap is in the education of entrepreneurship. The science is great, the tech is great, but what about IP? We were talking about patents earlier. What about the business side? I know that might lie somewhere between the incubator and the life sciences center and the education, but I just was curious on how do people get that acumen?
I think there's a lot of great programs that exist within the Philadelphia marketplace, and there's a lot of opportunities to bridge those gaps, and it's really looking for where those sweet spots are. Science Center's had programs, kind of a program that we've had for 13 years, where we were taking kind of that research out of universities and kind of working with a couple key folks to try to commercialize their products. We recognized that there's also gaps from a psyche standpoint, to get to your question. So we created a program this past year called our Founders Fellows. And so in most instances, they're first generation advanced degree STEM candidates who, because of being first generation students, they're not looking at entrepreneurship as a path. And so we're giving them a $50,000 stipend to work with us 20 hours a week over the course of the year. The first 6 months, it's hardcore entrepreneurship training. And then the next 6 months is real hands-on opportunities to do work with the startup, to do work with the ecosystem to actually grow their startup idea. At the end of the year, they may not choose to grow into entrepreneurship, but we all recognize and know that at the end of the day, those skills that you've gained by that are different than probably what you would have done in a normal fellowship. And so they're accretive to wherever you go, even if it's not into the entrepreneurship model.
Any other questions? Going.
Yeah, exactly.
It's ready. Everyone's ready for lunch. Thank you all so much. Thank you to our panel.